Hello everyone, this is David from BBA of Dr. Residence College of Arts and Science. Today I like to speak about the case study of business leadership in South Africa at the mid-range of 1994. The democratic multiracial elections of 1994 ended the apartheid era in South Africa. Leading up to the historic change, a group of white business leaders saw that their country might follow one of the two paths. It might experience an overthrow of minority rule, ending up something like Cuba with a revolution and nationalization of major industries, and isolation from which much of the world. Alternatively, it could follow a path something more like Brazil, which ended military leadership and redemocratized to tolerate social change and political presence while encouraging a dramatic business growth. From 1948 to 1991, the South African government had enforced the apartheid, a policy of racial separatism that favored the less than 10% of population defined as white, non-white people could not own property of a run business reservoir. The non-white people could not own property of run business outside reserved areas. And next, our team Shirley will explain about detailing the topic of introduction.
From 1948 to 1991, the South African government had enforced apartheid, a policy of racial separatism that favored the less than 10% of the population defined as white. Non-white people could not own property or run business outside reserved areas, and the government forcibly resettled more than 3 million people to black homelands, areas that were described as creating separate nation states for ethnic groups. Non-whites had to have a work pass to enter areas designated white. Public gatherings were forbidden outside of church meetings, and black voting was allowed only in homelands far from population centers. Conflict within the country turned violent. Violence spread on all sides. 4,000 people were killed and 50,000 were detained without trial during the revolts in the 1960s. Next, my teammate casestudy will be presenting the next part.
Black leaders were existent and impressions and speaking up against government policy led to threatened with arrest or arrest. In 1962, the United Nations proclaimed the transaction and many countries extended their own trade restrictions. In 1980s, a diverse movement pressured investors not to buy shares in company done business in South Africa, leading many international companies to withdraw from the country. Next, my teammate Ashwati will continue the next part.
In spite of country's history of oppression and the violence, when F.W. de Klerk became president in 1989, he broke with the earlier policies of the National Party and immediately called for a non-arrest South Africa. The Africa National Congress ANC was unbanned and its leaders returned from exile. Other leaders were freed from prison. Nelson Mandela was released after 27 years of imprisonment. Then in 1994, South Africa held its first free elections, marking a peaceful transition from a government controlled by the country, white military. The African National Congress ANC won over 62% of the vote in the election, in which 16 million of the 21.7 million eligible voters had never voted before. The new government was led by the ANC's Nelson Mandela, and next my teammate Sushmita will explain about the next topic.
Determining the role of business in South Africa's history transition leads to key questions. What factors did business leaders here act to push the country's futures away from isolation and missed opportunities toward a high road of participating in an increasingly globalized economy? How effective were they? And if business leadership played an important role in the events in South Africa, could they take a similar role elsewhere? Of the country's history of oppression and violence, when F.W. de Klerk became president in 1989, he broke with the earlier policies of the National Party and immediately called for a North-Casist South Africa. The African National Congress (ANC) was unbanned and its leaders returned from exile. Other leaders were freed from prison. Nelson Mandela was released 27 years of imprisonment. The government began rescinding apartheid laws. Thank you.